Welcome back to Supporting Physician Spouses. I am your host, Kendra Harvey, and if you were here 2 weeks ago for the National Physician Spouse Day episode, I hope something in it landed for you. I hope you felt, even if only for a moment, genuinely seen. And if you caught last week's episode on making decisions ahead of time, which is a beautiful one, and I'd encourage you to go back and listen if you've missed it, you already know that thoughts shape our experience and our reality, that what you anticipate primes you for what you find, and that the internal landscape is where the real work lives. I'm going to assume you already understand it at some level, because if you've been listening to this podcast for any amount of time, you do. What I want to do today is go somewhere that concept alone doesn't take you, because here's what I've noticed in the women that I work with privately, and honestly in my own story too, that knowing your thoughts shape your experience does not automatically change your thoughts. And for physician spouses specifically, there is a reason for that, a real structural reason. And until you understand it, all the thought work in the world will feel like trying to redirect a river with your hands. That is what today is about. Let's start with something honest. Most of the women that I talk to, they are high-functioning, self-aware, no stranger to personal development, and they have heard some version of the Thoughts Create Feelings framework before. They've read the books, they've listened to the podcasts, they understand it conceptually, and they still feel stuck. Not because the concept is wrong, but because the thoughts that are most in need of examination are the ones that they can no longer see. Here's what I mean. When a thought is new, when you consciously choose to believe something, you can feel it as a choice. But when a thought has lived in your nervous system for 5, 10, 15 years, it stops feeling like a thought. It becomes wallpaper. It becomes the air in the room. It becomes just the way things are. And this is exactly what happens inside a physician marriage over years of survival mode. Think about what survival mode actually asks of you. It asks you to contract, to become efficient, to cut what isn't essential and keep what keeps the household running. It asks you to stop advocating for things that aren't available anyway, to stop wanting what there isn't room for, to become very, very good at adapting, and to stop noticing that you're doing it. And in that process, quietly, it happens. Beliefs form. Not dramatic beliefs, not beliefs you would ever say out loud at a dinner party. Small ones, structural ones, the kind that live underneath everything else. It might sound like, I have to hold this together or everything's going to fall apart. If I slow down, I'm failing. My needs are the ones that get managed last. That's just how this works. I should be grateful, and wanting more is selfish. Or even, this is just who I am now. Those are not facts. I want to say that clearly. Those are not facts. Every single one of them. But they don't feel like thoughts. They feel like an accurate description of reality because they have been confirmed again and again by years that seem to prove them true. You did hold it together. Things did fall apart when you slowed down. Your needs were managed last repeatedly. And so the thought and the experience became fused. And somewhere along the way, you stopped questioning whether the thought was true and just accepted it as part of the structure of your life. That is the difference between a thought you can easily examine and a belief that has become identity. And that distinction matters enormously for this work. And here's where we get really specific to physician spouses and why I think this community carries a particular version of this. Many of you entered this life having agreed, consciously or not, to prioritize the medical career. That was the deal, or at least how it felt. And in the early years, that prioritization was necessary. Training is genuinely demanding. The margin was genuinely thin. The sacrifice was genuinely required. So you adapted. You became someone who could carry a lot, someone who didn't need much, someone who could be the steady one, the capable one, and the one who got things done, the person who handles it. And that person served you. She got you through. But here's what doesn't get said enough. She also quietly convinced you that being her was non-negotiable. The overfunctioning stopped being a response to a circumstance and became a self-concept. The self-neglect stopped being a season and became the default. The resentment that built up along the way stopped being a signal and became something to manage, to suppress, or to feel guilty about. Survival mode doesn't just shape what you do. Over time, it shapes what you believe about who you are. And when it goes that deep, when the thought is no longer, I'm doing a lot right now, but I am someone who does a lot and doesn't get much back, and that's just my life, it's no longer a thought you can simply swap out for a better one. It is a belief that has to be untangled carefully, all the way to the root. That is a different kind of work than deciding ahead of time to love your new city. Both matter, but they are not the same thing. So, what do you actually do with this? I want to give you something practical, not because this work can be reduced to a simple exercise, but because I know that abstract conversations without a place to put your hands don't help you. The first thing I want you to do is to identify the 3 feelings you experience most often on an average day. Not your worst day, not your best day, but a regular Tuesday like today. What does it most often feel like to be you? Think for a moment. What does it most often feel like to be you? Maybe it's exhausted, resentful, and numb. Maybe it's anxious, capable, and hollow. Maybe there's a low-grade flatness that lives just underneath the productivity. Whatever it is, name it. 3 feelings. If you can, write them down. And I want to name something gently here because I know this community well. Many of you are not practiced at this. You are practiced at identifying what needs to happen now. You are practiced at managing, at logistics, at output. The internal vocabulary, the language for your own emotional experience, often gets quietly underdeveloped in survival mode because emotions that don't serve the task at hand don't get much airtime. So that's just kind of a warning that if you sit down to do this and you find yourself stuck, that is not a failure. That is always useful information. It means that your own inner experience has not been given space in your life for a while, and that itself is worth paying attention to. Start by just noticing, not changing, not analyzing, just noticing. When something lands in your body, put a word to it. Tight chest, short patience, that hollow feeling in the evenings, give it a name. Now, once you have your 3 dominant or primary feelings, the next step is to start noticing what you're thinking when those feelings show up. Now, that's not what happened. I want you to think about what you're thinking about what happened. And there is a gap there, and that matters. Let me give you an example of what happened. Your husband got called in on a Saturday morning that you had been counting on. Now, what are you thinking about it? You may be thinking something like, he always chooses work. This is just how my whole life is. I'll always be the one who carries this. My needs don't matter here. Or, and this is possible too, you could be thinking about it as, this is disappointing. I'm going to sit with that for a bit and then figure out what I actually need today. Same circumstance, radically different internal experiences, not because one person is more evolved or more positive, but because they are thinking different thoughts. Write down what you find, even a few words, even a sentence. The act of putting a thought on paper moves it from something that happens to you into something you can actually look at. And for beliefs that have been living underground for years, that visibility is genuinely significant. You cannot examine what you cannot see. Now, here's where I want to slow down a bit, because this is the part most frameworks skip. And this is the part that matters most for the physician spouse specifically. Once you have some of those thoughts in front of you, I want you to ask one question before you do anything with them. Not, is this thought true? We will get there. But I want you to ask first, how long have I been thinking this? There is a meaningful difference between a thought you picked up this year and a belief that has been present for a decade. A thought you adopted consciously and a belief that formed so gradually you never noticed it happening. A response to current circumstances and an identity that predates them. When a thought has been present long enough to become identity, simply questioning it feels threatening. Not intellectually threatening, I'm talking existentially threatening. Because it's not just, maybe this thought is wrong, it's, maybe who I've been for the past 10 years is not actually who I am. Now, that is a big thing to sit with, and I want to honor that it is big, rather than rushing past it. This is also why this work is genuinely hard to do alone. Not impossible. There is real value in starting exactly where I've described today. But the beliefs that are most calcified, most fused with identity, most in need of examination, those are the ones we are least able to see without another perspective. Someone who can sit with you and say, not judgmentally, but clearly, there it is. Do you see it? That is the work that I do privately, not fixing the structure of your marriage or the demands of your husband's career, but helping you see clearly enough that the thoughts running the show inside your own life finally have somewhere to land outside of your own head. The women I work with are not women who have fallen apart. They are capable, competent, often remarkably high-functioning women who are exhausted by the cost of maintaining all of it, and who are ready, finally, to look at what's actually underneath the tired. Let me bring this back to something I said at the beginning. Knowing that thoughts shape experience does not automatically change your thoughts, especially when those thoughts have been present long enough to become beliefs, especially when those beliefs are fused with survival mode adaptations that were for a long time genuinely necessary. The path forward is not faster thinking or better affirmations. It's honest excavation. It's becoming willing to look at what you've been believing, not to tear yourself apart over it, but to finally see it clearly enough that you get to choose. Because here's what I know to be true and what I come back to with every woman I work with. The version of you that exists on the other side of survival mode is not smaller than who you've been. She is steadier. She has more capacity, more clarity, more groundedness than is possibly visible from where you're standing right now. And she is not built by waiting for her husband's schedule to change, or for training to end, or for life to get easier. She is built by doing exactly this work. The quiet, unglamorous, deeply necessary work of looking at what you've been thinking and deciding whether you want to keep believing it. That work is available to you, not someday, in this season with the life you actually have right now. If you want a quiet first step outside of this conversation, there is a free guide on my website, Life After Survival Mode, designed to be exactly that. A private starting point, just a door to open when you're ready. And if you're at the point where you know you're ready to go deeper, Where something in today's episode landed in a way that feels less like new information and more like finally being named, I work privately with physician spouses, and you can find that information in the show notes. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for staying with something that asked a little more of you than just feeling seen. That willingness is not small. It's actually where everything starts. I'll see you next week.